Hello, welcome back to the channel. So we finally have a new non-endgame mode that isn't just more similar universe with currency wars. And I've been excited for this mode basically ever since it was revealed, and now that it is finally out, is it any good? Yes, it is probably the best game mode we have gotten in a long time. Now I do want to say that I am not at the max level yet, and I have heard that it is pretty hard, but even then I will still probably enjoy it, even if I do get to the harder modes, because I just enjoy the mode in general, but I'm getting ahead of myself. What makes the mode so good? Well, for one, it actually changes how the game is fundamentally played, which was my main problem I had with a lot of the similar universe stuff, because yeah, we did get more, like, mechanics, but the actual format of it didn't really change at all. But Currency Wars actually changes how the game works. You know, the shop system adds a lot of strategy and planning on, you know, if you'll try and get certain characters, if you should try to save to get the investment, I forget what it's called, but to get the extra money, like, you know, if you should, like, level or anything like that. Obviously, this isn't, like, a new thing. It's the same as, like, TFT and all these kind of auto chess games. But I think combining it with Star Wars combat works really well. On top of that, the whole on and off field system adds a lot to team building, since you have way more off-field slots than on-field, so you need to kind of decide, like, you know, what characters you want to on-field, and, you know, certain characters are only on-field, so you can't just have, like, a ton of on-field characters at the same time. So if you want certain characters from one archetype and another archetype, they might not all fit together, so you have to pick and choose which characters you actually want. And for me, like, one of the parts of the game that I enjoy the most for combat is team building. It's why I have a problem with, like, archetypes like Break, where the team is just basically made for you. But this game mode is basically just built around team building, you know, finding the right characters for your build, working with what you have because of the RNG nature of it. Is it like the most complex thing in the world? No, but I feel like I have to, you know, actually think about what I'm taking, you know? Whereas I feel like with a lot of the buffs and stuff in Devar's universe, I can kind of just go on autopilot and win. Now, this could also partially be just because it's been out for way longer. But I feel like because it is the characters themselves, it, one, makes it feel like your choices matter more, and two, that your characters are a lot more impactful, because before it kind of felt like the blessings were doing most of the damage instead of your characters, and while there is still some of that, like, you know, express, and, like, I don't think that having some, like, alternate forms of damage is always bad. I think it's more so when that feels like it's the only real thing, but for the most part, it does feel like your characters are the ones doing the big damage. Like, obviously for team building, there will be some RNG to it that is kind of just inevitable with these kind of games. But I feel like most of the RNG complaints are from people just trying to force certain comps. And don't get me wrong, those comps are really good. And, like, obviously there are some, like, comps that are better than others, and I will get to that in a sec. But a lot of the time, like, you kind of need to work with what you have, because if you're just constantly rolling for a certain character, yeah, sure, you might hit it every once in a while, but it's still really not really a good consistent strategy, because a lot of the time you're probably not going to hit the character you want, and then you're going to just run out of money and just lose. Now, obviously, if you already have your team set up, it's a little bit different, since all you really need is more, like, stars and items and that kind of thing. But even then, from what I've played, usually you don't have your full team set up, at least until, like, the third plane. And I do think they could do a bit more to somewhat alleviate the RNG, because it can be annoying sometimes, though I don't really know what they would do. RNG is just kind of how these games work, you know, sometimes you will get everything you want in a couple of rolls, and sometimes the game will just refuse to give you the one character you want, and it's just, you know, it's just kind of how it is, you know? But I think that, like, working with what the game gives you, one, allows you to actually build stuff easier and not just, like, have a bunch of random characters, but two, it's just more fun than just playing the same comps over and over again. You know, to me, I try to play, like, a different comp every single run. Obviously, if I just get handed a good comp from the game, I'm gonna take it. But I try to play different things, you know? Now, to get to the main thing that I think really makes this mode exciting is the character changes. I haven't used all of the characters yet, so I don't know what, like, all of the changes are, mainly of some of the 5 stars. But from what I have played, they have been really fun and gave new life to a lot of characters. Just to name a few, Welt is insane in this mode because he can just straight up give you more time, which, like, certain characters are more of, like, sub-DPSs now, like Saber, because of, you know, off-field mechanic, or, like, having completely different roles than they normally do, like Yanqing being a debuff character now. Like, Celia is really good. The whole mechanic of Bronya summoning the boss version of Kokolia is really fun and also really strong. I feel like overall, each character feels a lot more unique and fun. And I have seen a lot of people say that they should use these changes to buff characters, and I partially agree. I do think that some of them would either be way too good, like Yunli just straight up blocking attacks, or just kind of go against the identity of the character, like Topaz getting AoE when she is a hunt character, though I think that her getting AoE in Currency Wars works for that mode. But overall, I do think that a lot of these could work, as long as you just change the numbers to not be as insane as the numbers in Currency Wars are. And like, sure, would some of them, like, well, to be kind of broken? Sure. But I would much rather a character be really good than just feel kind of useless, you know? Now, even though I do like the mode a lot, I do have a couple of problems with it. Nothing, like, hugely detrimental, but just a couple of things that make it a bit more annoying, you know? Firstly, I think there are some archetypes that feel just kind of boring. Like what is the heal archetype supposed to do, you know? And while almost every archetype can be good, there are definitely some that are better than others. And Gaia, I think, is honestly just way too good, especially for being a one-star character, making her pretty easy to set up. Like, where the other archetypes are mainly based around higher-tier characters, so they aren't as easy to force. The Goliath comp, I feel, is just way too consistent, because basically all the characters you need are, like, lower rarity characters. Now, maybe it's good that she's so strong, because it gives people an easy way to beat the harder mode, but I feel like she's just a bit too good, you know, where it just makes it a bit boring. Two, I feel like we might end up needing a 3 times speed for this mode, because of just how much characters can act, especially with, like, follow-ups and that kind of thing. And just rewatching the same animations over and over again, while just not really being able to do anything, it's just kind of annoying, you know? Especially in some combats where, like, you go in, and the enemies immediately die, so you need to load out of combat, and it just gets annoying, you know? And 3, I feel like the later occurrences, like the harder ones, I feel like are almost too hard to the point where in the later runs you can't really pick them unless you have an insane build going on. Like, yeah, they should obviously be harder, but I feel like the difference is just way too big. And especially because of the amount of damage you take, sometimes you might just straight up die. But overall, I do think this mode is great, and I am excited for the future of it, because I feel like there's a lot more potential for updates than with the other modes. Not all of the characters are even in yet, like a lot of the 4-stars, I believe, aren't in this mode. Or even, I believe, some of the 5-stars, like Clara. But, like, even besides that, like, you know, changing the rarities around, making some 5-stars 1-stars, vice versa. You know, what archetypes are in, like maybe a counter archetype and that kind of thing. You know, like completely flipping how certain characters work. There's just so much that could be done. But I think that as long as they make the updates substantial enough, I do think that this mode will have potential to last for a long time, and I don't think will really get stale, just because the gameplay loop allows for a lot of diversity in gameplay. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.